All right. Yeah, I wrote that in the middle of building the North Carolina brewery, which was just a bad idea. So I was already traveling I went every other week for 2.5 years, flew back there, fly back on, spend 5 days out there, and then on the weekends, I would, a couple times a month, take the whole weekend and write, and then put it down for another month, and then my wife was not happy with me.
What is your favorite type of beer? Are you a light beer guy? Do you dark? Do you fluctuate?
I fluctuate quite a bit. I finished off last night with a barrel-aged narwhal, so sort of at that extreme. But no, I like hops. I like malt. I get into sours at some level, but I'm mainly a hops forward person.
Me too. Is there like a seasonal aspect to it? Dark beers in the winter type of thing?
No. I drank Guinness, unrefrigerated Guinness, in some third world country at it was like 95 degrees out, and everybody was drinking Guinness, and it's like it tastes pretty good, not refrigerated. And
really?
So, yeah. So not really hot climate, and it's the Guinness that we don't get here, at least not regularly anymore. The Foreign Extra Stout is popular in really warm climates. The real strong one, not the Guinness you get over here on draft. But 7% or 8% alcohol.
I've been known to drink plenty warm Sierra Nevada beer. Mm-hmm. I'm known for saving my beer when I pour it and don't finish it and throw it back in the fridge. For some reason, you can re-drink Sierra Nevada. I feel it's the only beer. Has anyone ever told you that before?
I have heard that, yes.
All right, so we'll get started with the early days. I guess my first question, where is your family from originally? Are they from Chico?
No, I moved here when I was 17, 1972. I had a couple of high school buddies who were a year ahead of me, and they were going to Chico State. Mm-hmm. And I came up on a bicycle tour that they were going to drop me off in the Bay Area to start a trip, and came to Chico on the way and thought it was a cool town. And I had just graduated high school. I'd say I was 17. It was a month or so after graduation, and I got a job. I walked around town and applied at all the bike shops, and got a job. So I called my mom, said, I'm not coming back. I'm moving to Chico.
So where were you born, and where'd you go to high school?
Born in downtown L.A., or near downtown L.A., and went to high school out in the valley, in San Fernando Valley, Woodland Hills.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I lived down there for 6-7 years down in.
Went to Taft High.
Very nice. So what kind of a kid were you? Were you kind of quiet and smart? Were you rambunctious?
I was super rambunctious.
Okay.
Got into lots of trouble.
Really?
Was into all sorts of things. Yep. And it was pretty wild.
Is there any story that you can tell us from back in the day?
There's lots of stories. If I was drinking beer, I'd get into some later. But no, I was into mini bikes and go-karts and bicycling and mountaineering. I had a neighbor who was a Sierra Club guide, and he took all the neighborhood kids up backpacking when we were young, and so got the love of the mountains. And he was a cyclist also, and he was a home brewer, and this was something he started when he was in college. In the 50s, he started making a little bit of beer, and then he took it to the next level. So back in the late 60s, when I started and he started, I said a number of years before that, he got into all grain brewing. He got into yeast culturing, and he was making beer, wine, sake. And as a little kid growing up, I would be in his house. His son and I moved to Chico together. Mm-hmm. So we were best buds from elementary school, and Dad was always brewing something.
So you were around that as a kid?
Yeah. Started at like age 6 or 7. I was around fermenting carboys of all sorts of things.
Were you tasting it?
I started to taste a little bit. Yep. And he was like, "Stay out of my stuff. Go brew your own." So
How did your parents feel about that?
They were science experiments, and
Okay.
I sort of hid them away.
Yeah.
So I had carboys in my closet, and I started brewing at a pretty young age, and
Wow.
did it for a number of years before I moved to Chico, and came up here with my home brewing supplies, and ended up enrolling in Butte College at the old campus, so in Durham. Started going there in '73, and started studying chemistry, and continued to make beer at home, and eventually opened a homebrew supply store in downtown Chico in 1976.
So I mean, you had a pretty clear vision of what you wanted to do. At such a
Well, I
young
mean, it was
age.
started out as a hobby, and
Yeah.
it evolved into a profession. And
Well, and taking the chemistry
Yeah.
chemistry major too.
One
I
of
did-
the things that one of the things I noticed when I opened up the book is you as a kid you like to tinker around with
Yep.
pull things apart, put it back together, and obviously that was a big thing with building the brewery. to
Yeah,
start.
it's unfortunate we don't have as many trade kinds of skills that we show junior high and high schoolers. But back in my early years, our junior high had a foundry. It had a machine shop, a small engine class, wood and crafts and those kinds of shops as well. So I got a taste of welding and fabricating and running a lathe and all that in junior high. And then I ended up buying a welder as one of my teenage presents from my mom. So I started welding at home, and had always had a love of tinkering and taking stuff apart and trying to put it back together. And when I moved to Chico, so I got a job in a bike shop. I'd worked in a couple of bicycle shops in LA when I was growing up to give me some money when I was in high school. And so working with my hands, and I was rebuilding Volkswagen engines on the side as a little bit of income for people I knew, and buying and selling a few cars and rebuilding them.
I'm kind of curious because I grew up in the Chapmantown area, and so speaking of bikes, I lived right off of Ricky Court, and prior to the brewery being there was these hills and jumps and stuff back there behind what is now, I believe, part of the campus at Sierra Nevada.
Yep.
So, what was it about that area that kind of, why'd you want to start the brewery there? in that location?
So the brewery started actually on Gilman Way, which is right across from where the Enterprise Record is today. It's called something different now, but we were there and realized we needed to find a permanent home. We were just renting a metal 3,000 square foot building to brew in. And so I went to Germany and got a used brew house as part of our plan to expand, and actually had it stored right over here for a little while, right behind here. And started looking for sites, and the city of Chico doesn't have a lot of manufacturing zone sites, and we needed to be in, back then anyway, what was called a light manufacturing zoning. And the city actually steered us to that area. So out on 20th Street, there used to be two soda bottlers. Royal Crown Cola and 7-Up were side by side. And they'd moved from Park Avenue. Actually, the 7-Up bottler was just right down the road here. And they had moved and built those areas, I think probably in the early 70s. They both moved out there, and the city said, here's where the bottlers are going in town, why don't you look out there? And this was before the overpass was built and before the mall, and so it was pretty, the edge of town kind of thing. And we looked actually at the old Chico Brewery building right on Broadway and 9th, between 8th and 9th was where the old Chico Brewery was. And I thought about that, and the city said, no, you can't go there. And we had actually even done a little structural analysis of the building, and it was where the bike shop I worked in had been as well. Poland Cyclery was on that side back in that era. But so the city sort of said, go out of town further, and sort of pushed us out this way.
So you get started. I mean, how much of a like entrepreneur were you? Like, were you kind of hungry to grow this business as big as possible at the beginning? Like, what was your mindset in terms of
I've still got my original business plan, and it's highly flawed. It showed making a living at 2,500 barrels a year. Actually, it showed making a living at 1,500 barrels, and if we could expand to 2,500, we would have a viable ongoing business, at least on paper. And once we started brewing, we realized that the costs were much higher. There were always things that you needed to spend money on that wasn't in the business plan, and so we realized we better grow or we're going to go out of business. And just a little bit of historical perspective. So 1977, New Albion opened. And between that time and 1981, and we started the business in 78. So our business plan, we wrote and started building equipment in 1978. And the industry at that point was comprised of 43 brewing companies in America. That was total. That's Anheuser-Busch, Miller, Coors, Stroh's, Pabst, and the handful of little guys. And so we were part of a group of six that opened between when New Albion opened in 1981. And by that point in time, a number of the breweries that had opened up in 78, 79, 80 had already gone out of business. And the Bacher Brewery in Nevada had closed, Cartwright up in Portland had closed, New Albion closed, this is by 1981. And there was us, Boulder Brewing Company, and River City in Sacramento, and that's who survived that first startup wave. And the problems were numerous for all of us. We were all very undercapitalized. We didn't have any money. There was no real market for craft beer. People didn't know what craft beer was. I mean, Fritz had done a pretty good job with the Anchor Brewery, Fritz Maytag, at establishing that American beer could be premium priced and could be distinctive and interesting. But up until that point, American small brewers were brewing the same kind of beer that the big brewers were. So they were making light lager styles and trying to compete against the big brewing companies. And they didn't have the budget. They didn't have money to reinvest. And these breweries had been around since before Prohibition, and had survived Prohibition, making soda or malt extract or doing something nefarious. And they were after Prohibition, they didn't have a lot of money to reinvest in their companies, and so their equipment was old and antiquated. And so those small brewers that were in America back in the 60s and 70s weren't making interesting beer. They were sort of chasing where the big brewers' trends had gone, which is lighter and lighter beers.
So were you like incredibly excited that this vision for this new kind of market and opportunity, or were you a little more humble and pragmatic and like, I don't know if this is going to work out?
I was terrified, because they're really, as I said, half of my peers had gone out of business within a couple of years. And so part of the reason why some of them went out of business, New Albion is a prime example, is their business model was even more flawed than ours. So they were brewing a barrel and a half of beer at a time, so 45 gallons per batch. And they were bottling it by hand with a gravity wine filler, and they were bottle conditioning like we were doing. But the volume was just so small and the labor was just so high that there was not enough money to survive on. And they weren't able to raise any more money to expand. And if 1978, 1980, those years, that's when interest rates went to 18%. Money was really tight. If we were able to borrow money, which we weren't, we probably couldn't have paid it back. The financial crisis that was happening back in the late 70s and early 80s sort of wiped out the appetite for investors to put money into businesses like that.
So what'd you do? How did you survive? How did you
borrowed money from family and friends and became super resourceful. So we were using returnable bottles, and we had a bottle washer. I was charging a nickel deposit on the glass, and when we would run out of bottles, I'd go to behind the Mexican restaurants, Casalupe and a few others, and go dig through the dumpsters and use Mexican beer bottles. The long necks were pretty close to bar bottles, and would wash the labels off and refill those. And so we just sort of struggled to make ends meet and to grow, and so we steadily grew from opening the brewery in 1980 until 88 when we moved to 20th Street.
Where did you distribute to?
Started out Chico only, self-distributing, and then as we had a little more capacity, we went to the Bay Area through beer distributors, and then we went to Portland and Boulder, Colorado, and we just picked some markets that were more progressive.
So the distribution in Chico was just enough to kind of...
That got us started.
Yeah.
And then as we added a little bit of capacity, so that I think for our first 6 or 8 months we were only in Chico. And then we went down to the Bay Area soon thereafter.
That seems like a pretty quick kind of expansion.
Well, again, we had there weren't a lot of consumers. The craft beer was not a thing, and so we had LaSalle's, and there were 3 or 4 bars in Chico that put our beer on, and a few restaurants, and we couldn't afford 6-packs, so we were individual bottles.
Out of grocery stores?
Individual bottles everywhere, yeah.
Oh, just everywhere,
yeah. The 12 ounce or 24 ounce?
That was a 12 ounce.
12 ounce,
yeah.
Individual bottles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
we, getting a run of 6-packs printed was like $10,000, and that was $10,000 more than we had. So
what did back then? What did a single bottle sell for?
85 cents.
85
cents. So we got 62 cents of that, I think, if I remember correctly. We didn't do any market research. We just picked what we thought was sort of the imports we were competing against, and that's about what a bottle, individual bottle, sold for.
So no kegs yet at this point?
No kegs. We started out draft only, and again, if you go back to 1980, there were no specialty bars like this.
Right.
The closest thing was an Irish pub theme kind of bar in the Bay Area that might have a dark beer or two, and maybe Harp Lager. I don't know if it was around even then, but they might have a couple of handles. But most bars had 1 or 2 domestic light beers on draft, and that was it. And so getting a bar to take you on was tough. And then if you and some of those out there who grew up in Chico would know that like during pioneer days, kegs used to sell for, at least here, like $18 or $20 a keg for a half barrel. And they were used by a lot of brewers sort of as a loss leader. They figured if your brand gets established on premise in a restaurant or a bar, then it's a good sales tool to drive somebody to a grocery store to go buy it. So breweries sold their draft beer almost at cost, and for us to try to survive off of a $30 keg would have been we would have failed immediately. So we didn't do draft until there became a number of specialty beer bars, primarily in the Bay Area, who would then have multiple handles, and we could get on tap, and we could charge enough money that we could at least cover costs.
Do you remember the name of the bar that was the first one in the Bay Area to?
Well, we were. There's a number of them, but probably the most important one was Chez Panisse, the restaurant in Berkeley, who put our beer on quite early, and they were a progressive, California cuisine restaurant that was really.
Are they still around?
They're still around. Yep. Really a trend-setting restaurant, and so other restaurateurs would go there and see that one of the only draft beers they have is Sierra Nevada, and so that was just a huge PR angle for us to use. That look, our beers at Chez Panisse, and they're the ones who are making waves in the food scene.
Was that interaction? Did that influence the reason why you opened the Torpedo Room in Berkeley?
No, I think we just we wanted to be down in the Bay Area, and Berkeley seemed like we had a good relationship with our wholesaler down there, and we figured it was a place to plant a flag.
Yeah.
So that must have felt like when you got into that restaurant there in Berkeley, did it feel like you had taken some type of different step in the business?
Well, we were starting to gain some traction, I guess, and get some exposure, and there started to be beer festivals and articles written in newspapers and magazines, and actually one of the big turning points was also an article that came out in the San Francisco Examiner Sunday magazine section of the newspaper, and they used to do a glossy 30 or 40 page insert magazine, and we were on the cover of that and got
wow.
The beer that's making Chico famous was the headline, and we got this huge PR push from that, or huge sales push, and at that point in time we were also starting to distribute in a couple of the grocery chains in the Bay Area. And those two things together made it so we couldn't keep up. So we were at full capacity, and that's when I went to Germany and bought the copper brewing equipment and tried to do a big expansion back then, and couldn't come up with the money to do it. So the equipment actually sat in storage for about 4 years, while we continued to grow the volume with our little equipment I had built myself, and we started brewing more and more brews a day, and through the weekends and around the clock, and got up to over 10,000 barrels on Gilman Way before we moved to 20th Street.
How did you feel? How did you change, I guess, during that process? Did you? I mean, as you can see your business growing, and maybe there's no end in sight to it. Like, do you become a different person in a way? Are you different focuses, different needs?
Well, I mean, my focus ended up being on making more beer. So I was, I started out doing all the brewing and all the bottling myself, and then as we grew, I started focusing more on trying to figure out how to make more beer so we could sell more beer so we could make enough money to survive. So it became a I wouldn't say we chased. We had one salesperson for many years. Sadly, he passed away, but he helped us a lot get our roots and on a growth drive. His argument, because we were like reluctant to expand too far, and the window of opportunities would pop up where a distributor would reach out and say, I'm selling wine in, we had a Washington, D.C., I'm bringing boutique wines from California, can I take some beer? So we started to get some distribution that was, called high spotting, but, just small little pockets of receptive consumers and retailers and distributors. And so we didn't have a national plan, but we were opportunistic. When we had a little extra beer, we would go into a new market. And he felt strongly, and it was at the time a wise move, that we need to sort of get into the marketplace why people really want our beer. So if they want it, let's figure out how to provide it for them. And so we grew that way for many years, just sort of as we would get a little more money, we'd buy another tank, we'd make a little more beer, we'd then open a new market, make a little more money, buy another tank. So we grew very slowly that way, but steadily.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're networking more now at this point. You're kind of reaching out to more people. Do you like that?
I was for many years pretty focused on just building the business, and so I didn't do as much traveling like with wholesalers and doing events. I did those early on, and then after I realized I needed to stay focused on figuring out how to survive the next few years and to grow to a point where we had enough cash flow to do the next phase of expansion. So I say it took us about 4 years to grow the Gilman Way business enough where we could finally then borrow money, because we weren't able to borrow any money before then.
And once you were able to do that, that's when
we moved on to 20th Street. But we were still, I spent the whole year before, refurbishing the copper brew kettles and rebuilding bottling equipment, and we still didn't have the money to buy new equipment, or not much of it anyway. So it took a few years before we didn't have to refurbish old stuff.
Yeah. And then when did you, is that when you started distributing out of state, or were you doing that before then?
I'd say we did a little bit of that almost from our second year.
Okay.
But it was, not a strategy of we're going to blanket the country or anything. It was, Boulder's a cool town. They're starting to drink craft beer. Let's go there.
Yeah.
And,
Where did you expand to once you moved over to 20th Street?
we started
Kept going further east.
Yeah, we started going further east and started filling in a lot of the gaps. And at that point, that was the late '80s. Craft beer was starting to be understood a little bit, and people.
One just like magazine write-ups and stuff. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, this is
There's no internet, so-
pre-internet.
Yeah.
I tell people that when I was looking for used equipment in the late '70s, I would go to the phone company, and they had yellow pages from around all of the states, and I would go through the yellow pages looking for old dairy equipment or soft drink equipment or whatever, and then I'd get on the phone and call somebody up saying, I understand you've got an old soda bottling operation. Do you have any old equipment? Or I'd go to dairy towns and go to the feed store and go ask the feed store manager if he knew where any old dairies were around the area, and they'd say, oh yeah, go up to so and so's place. He used to have a tank and some pumps, and so I drove around California, Oregon, up into Washington doing that.
Cool. So maybe it's a good time to fast forward into the future. We can skip a decade or two here.
Okay.
It's 2021. As a consumer, I've noticed you guys are branching out now even beyond craft beer. We have a couple kombuchas here. Actually, we can taste right now. Strange Beast. So Strange Beast is the name of your kombucha line?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. What do you got there, Byron?
So this is actually my favorite. This is the watermelon. And interestingly enough, Byron and Brian, they come in here quite a bit. But I don't know if this statistic is true, but they said that we are the #1 selling Strange Beast bar in the country. I curate all the beer here. I'm kind of the beer nerd out of the partnership here, but we're bringing in 6 of these kegs a week.
Wow.
This stuff sells really, really well.
Yeah.
I love it. We drink a ton of it. A lot of our fitness folks are super into it. And it's really good. It probably is top 3 bestseller every single month here.
Great.
So I think kudos to you guys for kind of branching out and jumping into that.
Yeah, we're scientists and artists. Our brewers are, and the kombucha was an interesting challenge for us. And I went to Kombucha Con. There's such a thing.
That rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, several years back, just to sort of understand the category. And kombucha production back then was like, I remember both home brewing and the beginning of the craft brewing industry. A lot of people who had desire but not a lot of knowledge. And
So you're talking like back in the 70s?
Kombucha production a few years ago was similar to how craft brewing world was, where people didn't understand the science at a high level. A lot of people just wanted to get into the category, but there wasn't as much information or knowledge around about how to make great kombuchas versus how to just take a SCOBY from your neighbor and to make a batch of kombucha. So we dug in to the science side of brewing kombucha. So we analyzed all the different cultures that were being used around the world. We partnered with Oregon State, and there's a lady up there who was working on her PhD in kombucha. That's her thesis is on the kombucha cultures. And so we partnered with them, and they worked with us to craft our own SCOBY. So we assembled the yeast and bacteria we wanted to produce the kinds of acids that give it the acidity. A lot of kombuchas are pretty heavy in acetic acid, and we didn't prefer that flavor, so we use a different kind of bacteria that produces different kinds of acids that are more pleasantly flavored.
What's a SCOBY?
It stands for a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast.
Okay.
Or yeast and bacteria. And that's how kombucha is produced. So it's the alcohol is formed during the fermentation process, and there's certain bacteria that break those alcohols down into acids, and that's what gives you the acidity. And most kombuchas that people are familiar with are considered non-alcoholic. They're
Right.
theoretically below 0.5%.
Right.
Some of them creep above that, but producing alcohol is part of the process of making kombucha. So it's a fermented tea that has say both bacteria and yeast that work together to take alcohol, produce alcohol, and then convert alcohol into acids.
Now, and did you like kombucha? Because I remember being introduced to it maybe 10 years ago or so,
Yep.
when people were drinking. Were you drinking it back
Yep.
then? Yeah. Okay.
And some of them I liked a lot more than others,
Right.
and I found some I really liked, and those were sort of the acid character that we wanted in our kombucha, rather than the more vinegary styles.
Had you ever tasted one with alcohol in it? People are more a higher
I
percentage?
had tasted some with alcohol in it.
Okay. So that, okay. Because I had
that's
never
pretty
seen,
new.
I'd never seen it with a higher alcohol percentage until you guys made it.
There's a few others. San Diego sort of is where the hotbed of alcoholic kombucha started up.
Oh,
So
okay.
Yeah,
Oh, and we have a few others.
Yeah, we started with Boochcraft.
Boochcraft and Juneshine.
Oh, that's
down
right.
there.
That's right.
Right, and we have a good friend who's actually from Chico. He works for Flying Embers out of Ojai, Ventura.
Mm-hmm.
We have theirs. We bring theirs in as well. But again, like you said, I think what you guys, it's definitely more distinguished. It's definitely different than the mainstream hard alcohol kombuchas. And that's why I like this.
Most of the kombucha cultures also contain Brettanomyces, which is a type of yeast that winemakers fear. Brett gets into wood and gets into the floors and the ceilings, and it's a very, very hardy yeast strain, and it can survive for years. And so it has the characteristic of sort of leather or horse sweat, or people describe it different ways.
Delicious.
But it can have a funky character. It can also be managed, and there's lots of different strains of Brettanomyces as well, and some are more pleasant than others. But it will continue to reduce the residual extract in beer or wine and change the character potentially for years. And so to have Brettanomyces wild in a brewery is not a good thing, because it is a hardy yeast, and it's not that it's hard to kill, but it is very tough as far as surviving outside of its environment. And so we didn't want Brett in our SCOBY, so that was one thing that we did not include when we were putting together the yeast and bacteria. But it's found in 80%, I think, of the kombucha cultures that are out there.
Is kombucha the first non-beer that you've produced? I can't recall you guys doing
Yeah,
a
that we
cider or
produced.
sour.
We've played around with ciders and other beverages on a limited scale. And our R&D group is always innovating and brewing stuff. So we've done quite a bit of experimental brewing. Not much of it makes it into the marketplace currently, but we do play around with a lot of different fermented beverages.
Right, and I guess one thing that we've kind of mentioned this to Brian and Byron is the cool thing about our system here is if you guys ever do want to introduce some stuff kind of slowly into the marketplace, which we've kind of done obviously with Strange Beasts and whatnot.
Well, we had the hard seltzer too.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just remember
okay.
And
that.
I think you guys have teas coming out.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think
that's
that's
right,
something
that's
that we're planning on doing
Yep,
fairly
yeah,
soon.
so-
But we
yes.
have plenty of data and obviously anecdotal data to that we could produce. So it's our concept here is kind of lends itself well to slowly getting into the marketplace with some of these rare stuff.
Yeah, who would have thought 3 or 4 years ago that seltzer would be such a thing? It's it has got the appeal of lower carbs, lower calorie.
Right.
It's just basically flavored alcohol and water, and most of it is produced by fermenting sugar and filtering any flavor out, and then sort of doctoring up the flavor with. So we're looking at if we're going to do it, we want to raise the category a little bit and do something that's more Sierra Nevada-ish.
Right.
So we're experimenting with a variety of.
I mean,
exciting.
Obviously you guys have tapped into the hard kombuchas, the teas, the seltzers. What's kind of next on the horizon?
Oh, wait. Let's hold on until we get to the hop forward part.
Okay.
Yeah, I just have.
We'll edit that out.
No, that's fine. I guess I just want to talk about North Carolina a little bit before we kind of get into what Byron is asking. How long ago did you begin even speaking about expanding over there?
So going back many years, actually, probably mid 2000s, we started to, question our long-term strategy of brewing everything in Chico and shipping nationwide. And we, ship refrigerated for product quality reasons to, everywhere outside of California. And so refrigerated transport from Chico to New York or Florida or Texas or further small communities around the country is really expensive. And when we had fuel surcharges would hit, sometimes we'd be paying $5 a case to ship the beer, and that was all of our profit. And so we started to realize that this at some point is not going to make sense. Who knows what's going to happen with energy costs, and the carbon footprint aspect of it was also a concern. So we started talking about it in the probably early 2000s, and then finally in 2010 we were pretty much at capacity in the Chico brewery, and it's like, okay, do we spend a bunch more money and do another expansion? Or do we look at sort of starting what would be a greener business model of brewing on both coasts? And made the call in 2010 that let's build a brewery elsewhere, and then started to search for the sites. And we started out with a list of about 200 potential cities from the Colorado Rockies east. We sort of looked everywhere from Ohio and Pennsylvania and Virginia.
You went on location at 200 different cities?
No, we started out with that list, and then I did send some of my team, started going out when we got the list whittled down to a little under 100, and then we whittled it down further, eliminated some, and then our senior leadership team went out on the road in 2000, probably 11, and looked at about 10 sites, and then we narrowed it down to a half a dozen, and then my family went out, and we went to schools and communities, and my son had agreed to move wherever we were going to build, so he was very interested in where he was going to have to live.
Brian, right?
Yeah, Brian. Yeah. So we ended up breaking ground in 2012 at the site in outside of Asheville.
Yeah, and I'll just say I've been there.
Yeah, we've got 200 acres there, over 200 acres, and we're right along a river. I don't know if our lower park area was open.
Oh yeah, we did everything.
Yep.
I mean, there was a band there. I mean, it's a fantastic amphitheater.
Yep,
it's just incredible.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we would get close to 750,000 people through there a year.
No kidding.
Yeah, there are challenges operating, on two coasts and all that, but the freight savings were significant, and we're at about almost the same volume at both breweries now.
Really?
Yeah. So 600,000 barrels roughly each.
It's a good decision.
What beers do you brew out there that you don't brew here? Because I know we've gotten like Sierra Vesa, I think it is. Is that what you guys brew out there?
We do a variety of Chico brews more variety because we've got a 10-barrel brew house here that's really set up for innovation brewing. Right. In Mills River, we've got a 20-barrel brew house that's right in the restaurant that they brew primarily. Oh, you saw that, yeah. So they brew primarily for on-premise there, but they do product development as well. We've got a team out there, and we're just putting in 3.5-barrel brew houses in both breweries as well. So we'll have state-of-the-art 3.5 barrel that's identical at both sites, so that we can work on recipe development and new product development in parallel. So our head of the innovation brewery in Chico, Scott Jennings, he moved out there in 2012 when we broke ground, and so he's the head brewer. He was the head brewer out there. He's now in charge of the innovation team out there.
That's awesome.
Exciting.
How much different is the water chemistry out there in terms of the brewing process?
So the water out there is super soft. There's actually a number of pharmaceutical companies that have located in the area because of the water is almost like distilled water coming out of the mountains.
Right.
So so soft just means it's like less
It has
contaminated?
no minerals.
Right.
Okay.
So it's like close to distilled water.
Huh.
So it's those of you who I guess know brewing waters, it's like Pilsen water, very close to soft as Pilsen, about 30 parts per million total hardness. And so we have to add some minerals to it to harden it up, because minerals are needed for the brewing process, calcium particularly, but a little bit of magnesium and zinc and other things the yeast needs for nutrients. And then calcium is required for both the yeast as well as clarifying. The calcium binds with protein, so there's a lot of things that minerals play a role in brewing.
Right. Derek, I'm going to say you need to put on your bucket list, Asheville, North Carolina.
Of course.
Is
Bucket list. Put on this year list.
There you go.
Yeah.
Spend some time downtown.
So what were the deciding? Can you say what the other city was that was second place?
We whittled it down, and Asheville, or North Carolina, was not on the list in the beginning. And the reason why, we had a bunch of criteria. So we were looking for adequate sewage treatment capacity, looking for good water. We were looking for a good workforce. We were looking for reasonable state taxes. We were looking for freeways and railway access to the markets we were trying to serve from the East Coast. So we had all this criteria when we were doing our city selection. But one of the things we put in there was we don't want to move into another brewery's backyard. Mm-hmm. We felt that if Sierra Nevada came into the same town where one of our competitors were, or a strong local brewery was, that would be viewed potentially as as we're big and coming into their community. So we eliminated a lot of cities, or at least a lot of areas that had an established strong brewery in the community. And Asheville had about 10 breweries at the time. Only one of them was of any size. Everybody else was really brew pubs. Highlands Brewery. And so we just had eliminated it, and we were looking at about 100 miles away in Tennessee, in the town of...
Really?
Of right over the Smokies. So it was geographically about 100 miles from Asheville. And the town of Maryville and Alcoa. And cool community. We had a great site, all ready to go. They had already put all the utilities and infrastructure in. It was the beginning of a big business park that was, they hadn't sold any land yet, so we would be their first anchor tenant. And they were making us a pretty nice deal on free sewage treatment for a period of time, and there were some perks thrown in to try to entice us. Right. So we had a site there. We had one in Virginia. We had one in Pennsylvania, which we crossed off the list, and so there were a handful. I'd say between Virginia and Tennessee were the two contenders at the end. And then I woke up one morning like, I don't know if I want to move to Tennessee. and so I said, let's look at Asheville.
As we all do when we wake up in the morning.
So we went back and looked at Asheville, and I called up the Brewers Guild, the Asheville Brewers Guild, and said, I'd like to come out and speak to all the brewers, and we're thinking about locating here. And they said, great.
They did?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful if you came here. We could turn Asheville into the Napa Valley of beer on the East Coast, and so we were welcomed with open arms, and we've enjoyed the community, and the reception's been great, and we try to be good neighbors, and we do have more sophisticated lab facilities than most small brewers have. So we help out the craft community out there. So we announced, and then Oscar Blues announced, and then New Belgium announced, and so all of us ended up. Oscar Blues is a little out of town there in Brevard, and New Belgium built right downtown in Asheville.
No kidding.
So, yeah.
So has it just been kind of an environment of we're in this together, and this is okay? What's good for one is good for all, or
yeah, I think.
Is there any contention between anyone here?
We're still all friendly. The community around there was artsy and outdoorsy and crafty and sort of all the things that sort of craft beer is about is in those communities, and so I think it was just it's a great place to get a lot of tourism. They get a lot of visitors from the East Coast. So I think everybody probably just liked the vibe of that area, and it's worked out.
Neat. How about going back to the beginning when there were only 43 breweries in the country, and you said some kind of didn't survive that initial wave?
Yep.
Were you friends with a lot of those owners as well?
Yep, very, and I'm still friends with many of them that are still in the business. Yeah, so the wasn't so much the craft community, but the brewing community, has generally supported each other. At least the production and brewers get along, and so we've been involved and active in the American Society of Brewing Chemists, the SBC, and the Master Brewers Association of America. And most brewers back then and today belong to those technical organizations. And there's a fair amount of sharing of knowledge and of best practices. The Brewers Association in Colorado has done a lot to also foster that. And I was on the board for over 30 years.
Yeah, I'm a member to that.
And so brewers got along. I mean, I could call up Coors or Anheuser-Busch or less so Miller at the time, but back in the late 70s, early 80s, if I needed some advice or some help, they would they'd answer the phone and try to help out. And Fritz Maytag at Anchor, we were down there fairly often, and I bought equipment from them and. Stainless pipe and old bottle fillers and things like that. So they were friendly to the upstart brewers. I mean, today we've got 8,000 small brewers, and I don't know all of them. But back in that era, I knew pretty much all the brewery owners. We would go to the annual Brewers Association convention, and there would be not very many brewers there, but I'd take my wife, and we got to be friends with a lot of brewery owners through those kind of associations.
So we'll get into our third beer here. We'll hop forward. Do you like that metaphor there? Yeah. Okay. It's quite a talk. Before we do this, real quick, I've noticed Pale Ale on the Friends TV show, a couple Adam Sandler movies. That's intentional, I assume. You product placement, or do they just use your stuff?
No, they use our stuff. So occasionally we've given beer for a party or something for the cast or whatever. But we don't pay the typical product placement kinds of things. We give beer.
That's neat. I just had to mention that.
So are you drinking a Pale Ale?
I am. Drinking the classic Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. I'm assuming this is the first beer you brewed. Is that correct?
It was the second beer I brewed. The first beer I brewed we didn't sell, and we had no intention of selling. So I brewed 5 barrels of stout. The first day we fired the equipment up, which was November 15th, 1980, and we brewed Pale Ale a couple days later. And as home brewers, I liked stout, and so we had no intention of selling it, and we figured, well, let's do something that's dark and we'll hide any sins we have, any mistakes we make. So we made a robust stout, and we've made that same recipe now every time we've commissioned a new brew house. So we brewed it when we built out here on 20th Street the first time, and we added the second brew house. We brewed it when we started up in North Carolina. We brewed the same original recipe that I brewed batch 1.
I mean, it's kind of miraculous that the second beer you made has,
Well,
you'd think like you'd have to go through like dozens before you kind of find the one that catches.
We did. Well, we went through. We didn't sell the first brew of pale ale. We dumped 10 batches or 11 batches.
Okay.
But we knew the beer we wanted to produce from our homebrew trial. So we started homebrewing our pale ale, which was going to be our flagship, back almost a year before we started commercial brewing, and we would brew once a week and do a test batch and alter the hops or alter the yeast, or we were trying to hone in on the recipe. And then we got a recipe we liked, then we had to scale it up to 10 barrels, and that's where we struggled initially. And it was really a fairly simple problem we were having, but we didn't realize it at the time. Our yeasts needed more oxygen than we were giving it during the wort aeration phase, which is right when the yeast is pitched into the fermenter. And we had an open cooler, and the wort would trickle down the outside. We figured that was plenty of oxygen. Turned out it wasn't enough, and the fix was simple enough that rather than pumping in the bottom of the fermenter to fill it, we would shoot into the top of the fermenter and through a little fishtail fan we made, and so the wort would get a lot more oxygen on its way into the fermenter. Right. And that was the solution, and then our fermentations took off and everything was good. And the previous 10 batches, they weren't bad, but they were different than each other because we were not adequately giving our yeast enough oxygen. Fermentations would slow down, and they wouldn't finish up quite the same batch after batch. And we didn't want to sell any beer until we knew we could make the same beer batch after batch.
All right, let's get into the future a little bit. First, Byron, what did you pour here?
So this is Humble Sea Brewing Company. Are you familiar with them? Santa Cruz. This is the Sand Dollar lot. This is a double hazy New England IPA.
I like the double hazies.
So I'm good friends with the guys at Humble Sea. In fact, my wife's from Santa Cruz. Grew up with the boys, and we invested when they were coming out of the garage. Like you said, you kind of friends and family. So we were early investors in that brewery, and they're turning out some fantastic stuff. I mean, they're super trendy. Their hazy beers are really good. In fact, Nick Pavlina is the head brewer owner. He went to Chico State, and obviously he was inspired by a lot of your stuff. So I'm sure a lot of these new guys on the block were big Sierra Nevada guys, and probably went into brewing because of that. I know I started home brewing. I mean, I was a massive fan of Pale Ale, and when I moved to Roseville, was at the Brewmeister, and they had these courses and then these little beer clubs, and that's where I started learning how to homebrew. So my first beer that I did in the kitchen was a Pale Ale recipe. They had little the little kits, and I thought it was pretty good. So
how are you with flattery or people that come up to you and say, you inspired me to do this or that? That must feel great. Are you little?
No, it's I've been around a long time, and for this industry, I mean, I've seen it go from nothing to where it is today. So I'm sure I've influenced quite a few people over the years. So it's fun. Actually, I spoke at UC Davis for the last 20 years. Give a talk to the students there in the brewing program.
Did you do that every year?
I did it. I was doing it 3 times a year.
Oh, wow.
Every quarter.
Is Charlie still doing it as well?
Charlie retired.
Oh, he did. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
So Charlie works for us now. He's our employee. So he retired from UC Davis, and he's our senior technical advisor. So he's worked for us now for 3 years. Yeah. Charlie's great. And so I started doing, he came to visit me right when he moved to the U.S., when he took over from Michael Lewis. So UC Davis for me back when I was starting was a huge influencer in that there was a brewing program, there was a brewing library, and a lot of the books and periodicals weren't available anywhere else. I mean, again, no internet, so you couldn't find these articles or these papers. They had them in their library at Davis. And there was a number of grad students and brewing professionals that I could chat with and pick their brains, and so it was a real asset for us to be able to drive down to Davis and spend the day, and so we had a lot of learnings from there.
Speaking of higher education or college, tell me if this is true. Someone told me yesterday that you were pretty involved in the free community college throughout California. Is that right?
I was way back. I used to volunteer to teach actually brewing and bike repair, but I don't know if that's what you're.
Okay, no. Someone said like you had been a big part. You know how there's like a new bill that was passed that community college is free.
Oh yeah, no, we did that. No, so my wife and I we donated. That's what you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
yeah. We covered, gave them enough money to pay for half of the tuition for all the students.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a few years ago.
It's amazing.
Good job. Yeah.
The junior college system was so helpful to us, and so my wife and I both went there. Our 3 kids went to Butte before transferring to Chico State, and when I decided to open the brewery, I went back to Butte and started studying welding and refrigeration repair and electrical wiring, and so I availed myself of a lot of what they were doing out at the new campus.
What other types of philanthropy are you into, or charities or anything?
Oh, a lot. Well, education in the environment. Both we do a lot with. Sit on a couple river boards, Western Rivers and River Partners here in Chico, and we're involved, let's say, with a fair amount of education kind of things. The brewing department at UC Davis, matter of fact, the laboratory is named after us. We made a big grant to them for the brewing program.
So, how do you feel about the environment going into the future? Are you optimistic that we're gonna curb this trajectory?
I'm hopeful, but I'm not sure optimistic is the right word.
Yeah, hope is good.
Yeah.
So the industry, right? Obviously, I think that we see the new trends here. You mentioned the seltzers. Talked about kombucha. What were you asking, Byron?
I was just gonna say what's next. I mean, one thing I love about the craft scene now is that you have a lot of breweries that are sort of pushing the limits, which is amazing. For the most part, some things are like, I wouldn't really drink that. People are doing smoothie beers.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Again, the seltzers. I'm not a massive fan of seltzers.
I can't stand Truly and all that stuff.
But yeah, I mean, obviously we got the hard teas. So aside from that, where else do you see it kind of evolving?
Well, whether it's the consumer pushing the brewers or the brewers pushing the consumers, there's some of both happening, I think. I hope there's always a place for great beers, and we're beer brewers at heart. But as I mentioned, kombucha was a interesting tangent for us that involved both our artistic side of putting together flavors and herbs and spices and fruit, and as well as managing the fermentation, and so it was one of those beverages that intrigued me and our team, and everybody sort of jumped on board, and I think we did a great job of producing it. So we're constantly experimenting, and we're pushing the boundaries out in all different ways in our R&D program. What's going to be the next big trend? That's a good question. I don't know that I have that answer. I think seltzers will be around for a while. They didn't come and go like the alcoholic. Hard root beer was a thing for a little bit.
Well, Zima was the original seltzer, right?
Yeah, Zima was.
Or is that like a malt liquor, maybe? I think.
Yeah, they were bordering on sort of where the seltzers are back then. I mean, they decolored and
These kids don't know about Zima. Okay.
Aside from the production side of things, what about the delivery? So you're sitting here at a very innovative tap room, right, where it's a self-pour system, and I would say 90% of, because I pick up a lot of beer from self-distributed spots, stuff that you can't get in Chico. Obviously, that's a big concept aside from our self-pour. 90% of the people that we interact with, they like the self-pour concept, but we do get a couple, few that self-pour, they haven't had a good experience at the self-pour tap room. So I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are, because the main qualm about self-pour is that you're losing the human interaction, right? And I love the human interaction. I love that. But I also love not having to wait for a beer and being able to sample all kinds of beers, because again, the industry is evolving, right? They're pushing the boundaries. So I don't know if I'm going to like this,
right.
Saison or, this barrel-aged stout, but I can try a few ounces before I commit to a full pour.
I think it's a intriguing concept and a great concept. I went to the very first one, self-pour I went to was many, many years ago. I want to say it was in Philadelphia, but I don't remember for sure what city it was, somewhere in the east. And they had them at the tables. And you had a more limited selection, but it was a credit card swipe, and you got X amount of up to X
And it was
amount of
probably
beers.
a long draw system.
Yeah, it was a long draw system.
Okay.
Yep. And I don't know if that concept's still going or not, but
I haven't seen that around.
but I think this is a great idea, and it does, it allows, they're socializing that happens at the taps as well.
There really is. There really is.
I guess just going back to like why we kind of created this concept is we love craft, right? And Chico has been 5-10 years behind trendier cities, San Diego, Bend, Boulder, and so we thought it would be this concept would be great in terms of introducing new things to the community, because you don't see a lot of this stuff, and there's no other bar in town really that has Humble Sea or some of these other beers. But we'll always have that Pale Ale as a set handle, because that's my favorite beer to this day.
Yeah. I mean, that you bring up a challenge that our industry is facing, and as consolidation has happened, primarily in the wholesale and retail tiers. So the big grocery chains have gotten bigger, the wholesalers have gotten larger, their books are fuller. It's become increasingly difficult for a small brewer to get distribution and to get good distribution. And so, having people like you who are fans going and seeking those beers out allows them to have an avenue to sell their beer outside their home market. And California is one of the states that has decent alcohol control laws for brewers to be able to self-distribute. Many states you can't do that, and so we can't self-distribute in North Carolina, for example. We have to go to a distributor. But in Chico, we still distribute our ourselves.
Yes, thank you for that.
Well, we wouldn't have survived if we didn't do that. There was not enough margin without self-distribution early on for us to survive, and we would have gone out of business if we were forced to turn the beer over to a beer distributor day one.
Yeah.
What So all the non-beer items aside, what are the more recent beer trends? I assume it's the doubles and the hazies.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's going both directions. So higher alcohol IPAs, doubles and triples are doing well, and moderate alcohol ones. I mean, a lot of people say they want to drink lighter, but you see them, they look at this one's 4.5 or 5%, and that one's 7. Same price. I'm going for the 7. So a lot of people.
So my brain works.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what makes the decision. But there's also a time when you want to have more than a couple of beers, and a lower alcohol beer makes sense.
So do you see more of like a light beer boom kind of coming, or do you think
I
it's
don't know if
happening?
there's a light beer boom coming, but I see that part of the craft world's going to stay. So there'll be a lower alcohol percentage, but hops and IPA are what craft's all about still. It's that style, or IPA styles are, I think, 70% of the volume or something. I mean, it's pretty shocking how much people have gravitated to hops. We were one of the early hoppy beers, and we got bagged on for being too hoppy. And now, seemingly people have
no
gotten so familiar with hops that they can't get enough.
Right.
And I mean, if you look at some of the new IPAs, the hazies, and some of the big ones that we're brewing, I mean, we're using 3 pounds a barrel or more of hops, which the average, when I first started commercially brewing, the U.S. average usage of hops per barrel was 0.22 pounds.
Wow.
And now you're using 3?
And we make beers today that use 3. Yeah. But I mean, we've always been closer to a pound per barrel overall.
Okay.
But hazy little thing and big little thing, those are in the 3 pound or more per barrel range.
I really want to thank you for those 2 beers. Yeah. Especially big little thing being $8.99 a 6-pack. Still.
Yeah.
It's just so funny.
Only in Chico. It's not.
Well,
it's
right.
not price in my
I'm just
area.
saying it's like the same price. It's 9%. It's so funny, like, I think about Bigfoot back in, 1998 and how kind of specialized it was, or like it came in at 9.2% or 10%. It was like, this is insane. And it's
10.
really
It was at
kind
11 in the beginning, right?
it's the norm now.
It varied around. It was around 10, but yeah.
It's so normal now for a beer to be
Yeah.
up around there.
Yeah, I mean, we started brewing Bigfoot in 1982. So it's been around for nearly 40 years.
I got a question.
Yeah, Mark?
This is just about. Is it Kvike? How do you pronounce it?
Kvik.
Okay. Are you brewing any beers with that yeast?
We've played with it.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we've got we have our own yeast specialists in house, and we've used lots and lots of different cultures, and
and that's just a yeast that ferments super fast, right?
very warm and super fast. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm seeing a lot more beers with that, and to me it's a little too earthy for me.
Yeah, it's got an interesting flavor component. Brewers have, I guess, have touted it because it does increase your brewery's capacity. Your fermenter residence time goes way down, and so you can crank a lot more beer through the operation. But it does have some distinctive characters that not everybody might love.
I mean, from a production side, it's nice to have that beer finished that fast, right?
Right.
You got more tank space.
Yep.
I
I
guess
have no
the
idea
last
what you're talking about.
I guess the last
I got
question
one more question.
that I want to ask
Yeah.
before Derek kind of finishes it off is, so I noticed you changed it on the logo. You changed it. You guys are family owned, operated, and argued over.
Mm-hmm.
Is the future still to keep this thing family owned?
Hopefully, it's a challenging world and a challenging industry, but we've got to, as long as the next generation is interested and wants to do it, then we'll try.
I mean, a lot of gratitude. Thank you for what you've done for the community.
Thanks.
For introducing the best beer in the world to our community and choosing us as your spot to produce it. So
Yeah, I think most of us, like, whenever we move to different cities, go to different cities, we take this beer with us. It's like it's the first thing I look for. I almost won't order another beer if I'm in another town. Where would you like the company to go in the next 5 years, and where do you want to? What direction would you like to go personally?
Well, I'm trying to work less.
Okay.
So that's been a goal. So I'm down to.
How's that going?
Some weeks it's all right. Some weeks I
here
will.
with his work pants on.
Yeah, I was working today. I'm gonna go home and I got meetings. I try to take Mondays and Fridays off now, but I don't always do that. But that's my hope. I've got a great CEO and leadership team, and so I'm trying to do the stuff I want to do more and the stuff I don't want to do less. So right now I'm involved in some projects. We're putting in some new can filling equipment and putting in a R&D can line this week. We actually just installed it and just commissioning it right now. So we're working on stuff like that, and I like to get my hands dirty in that. So I help in projects. Some of my folks may think I hinder, but anyway, I try to help.
I bet they don't think that.
But I'm not spring chicken anymore, so I want to be able to ride my bike and
You're looking young
travel.
still, gotta say. Yeah.
66.
But the bike riding must help.
Yep, I try to get out my bike 3 or 4 days a week, and
awesome.
stay a little bit fit. And I built a wood shop, so I'm gonna play more on building stuff. I used to do a bit of woodworking way back, and I have a metal shop as well at my house, so I've got welder and lathe and that kind of stuff. So.
Well, if you need any black walnut, my business partners, this is all the same tree. He's 5th generation, and they bought that property in the late 1800s. Huh. So he's got a lot of black walnut if you're interested.
I just milled some black walnut. I have a big mill as well.
Oh,
So
nice.
I just slabbed some, not nearly this big though. Just did that last week.
Yeah, all these tables are from the same tree.
Very cool.
Can you share kind of your vision for the company here in the next 5 years or so, or is that top secret?
No, it's not top secret. No, I mean, hopefully we can continue to, innovate and be, competitive in the craft scene and make sure we're producing beers that people want to drink or beverages that people want to drink. And so just trying to make sure we're relevant. We're now the oldest craft brewery in the U.S., still surviving. I mentioned that those early years from 78 to 81, six breweries opened up, and 5 of them have closed. So we're the last one from that era that's still around. And
It's a reason for that.
Yeah, many others came and went. So I mean, this industry is evolved and changed dramatically since I started. But it's not a simple or easy business. The barriers to entry are much lower today than they were when I started. I mean, now there's the internet, tons of knowledge, tons of consumer interest. There's breweries in just about every community now. That wasn't the case back when I started. So it was it's been a lot of years of educating people about beer and craft beer and what the differences are. And I think the brewers have come a long way in raising their game. Again, back when I started, there were a lot of brewers not making the best beer, and that was the downfall of a number of them. Today, making great beer is really table stakes to enter the marketplace. You better make great beer, but you also have to innovate and make sure that you're relevant to the changing consumer, because consumers changing really rapidly now.
Right. We're seeing that here.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait for the day that we have 24 Sierra Nevadas on tap. Hopefully we can do that at some point. It'll be fun.
We've done, I think you might talk to Terrence. I want to say we did one account with over 50 different beers. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Ken, this was an honor.
Yeah,
Thank you so
I've
much.
enjoyed myself. Thank you guys, and good luck, and I'll come on in and have a beer one night with you.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Come on back on the podcast, too. There's plenty more to talk about. Thank you so much.
Be happy to.